Hey, welcome to The Explainer. This is where we take big, complex ideas and break them down, looking right at the source material.
So today, we're going to dig into how one company, Patagonia, is trying to tackle a massive paradox. How do you run a successful business on a planet that's in crisis? It's a question that really gets to the core of what capitalism is all about.
Okay, so before we can really get Patagonia, we have to talk about this fundamental clash, right? It's this tension between business as usual and what our planet actually needs to survive. And honestly, this conflict has shaped so much of our modern world.
So you've got traditional capitalism on one side. A lot of the time, it's all about short-term profit. And things like environmental damage, well, that gets written off as an externality. Basically, it's a cost for someone else, maybe a future generation to deal with. This is the system that gives us those big boom and bust cycles we hear about.
But then there's this other idea, right? It's called conscious capitalism. And it says, hey, what if a business could serve a higher purpose besides just making money? Now, this slide here kind of lays it all out. You see, a lot of companies are profitable, but maybe not so virtuous. The real goal, that sweet spot, is in the top left corner, profitable and virtuous. It's where doing well financially and doing good for the world are the exact same thing. And for half a century, that's exactly where Patagonia has been aiming.
And the whole journey really kicks off with a founder who, and he'd be the first to tell you this, never even wanted to be a businessman. He was a climber, a surfer, an outdoorsman through and through.
Yeah, the founder, Yvon Chouinard, he literally just started out making better climbing gear for himself and his buddies. That's it. And this whole philosophy, which he wrote about in his book, it just bakes this love for the outdoors right into the company's DNA from the very beginning. The point was never about squeezing out every last drop of productivity. It was about living a life that was actually connected to the natural world.
And look, this philosophy wasn't just some nice-sounding mission statement on a wall. Nope, it kicked off a 50-year journey of bigger and bigger commitments, turning those values into real, tangible, and often really tough actions.
All right, let's really look at this timeline, because it tells an amazing story. You can see how things just kept ramping up. Back in '85, they made their giving official, pledging 1% of all sales, not just profits, mind you, to environmental groups. Then, fast forward to '96, they take this massive risk and go all in on 100% organic cotton. That meant redoing their entire supply chain. And every step after that, launching recycling programs, repair programs, it all built on what came before, leading up to the absolute game changer in 2022.
And along the way, they did some things that were just completely out there marketing-wise. Just look at this famous ad from Black Friday 2011. It ran in the New York Times. Here you have a clothing company on the biggest shopping day of the year telling people, don't buy this jacket. They even spelled out the environmental cost of making it. It was such a bold move, and it really solidified their whole anti-consumerist vibe, forcing their own customers to stop and think.
Okay, so then we get to 2022. After 50 years of constantly pushing the boundaries, Patagonia pulls off its most radical move to date. This wasn't just another initiative, this was a complete reinvention of what it even means to own a company.
With this incredibly simple but powerful line, Yvon Chouinard just gave the company away. So why would he do that? Well, it was all about protecting the company's mission forever. He wanted to get away from the pressures of going public, Wall Street, where he knew the focus would always, eventually, shift to short-term profits instead of long-term responsibility.
So you're probably wondering, how on earth does this actually work? Well, the structure is actually pretty brilliant in its simplicity. So, first thing, all the voting stock, that's the 2% that actually controls the company's decisions, that goes into a brand new trust. The trust's one and only job is to make sure Patagonia never strays from its values, ever. Okay, then what about the other 98%? The non-voting stock, the part that's worth all the money. That gets handed over to a nonprofit called the Holdfast Collective. And finally, here's the kicker. Every dollar of profit the company makes from now on gets paid out as a dividend to that nonprofit, which then uses it to fight the environmental crisis. So you see, they separated the power from the money. The purpose is locked in for good.
But what's the end game here? What's the bigger picture? See, Patagonia isn't just trying to change itself. It's actively trying to change the whole system. And it does that through something researchers are calling corporate activism.
And this slide here does a great job of breaking down their strategy. Research points to three main ways they do this. The first is what's called normative influence. That's basically trying to persuade us, the consumers, to think and act more sustainably. The second is mimetic influence, which is just a fancy way of saying lead by example, right? They're hoping other businesses will see their success and copy them. And finally, there's coercive influence. This is where they use their muscle to pressure their own suppliers and even politicians to do better.
And yeah, that influence isn't always some gentle nudge. This is an actual tag they sewed into their clothing. No joke. It was a direct, pretty disruptive, and totally unapologetic message. They were trying to get their customers to vote out politicians who weren't taking action on climate change. It's a perfect example of how they moved way beyond just selling jackets and started trying to drive real political action.
So all of this, it brings us to one last really big question. Is this model truly a blueprint for the future of business? I mean, a company that serves the planet instead of shareholders? Or is Patagonia just a beautiful, one-of-a-kind exception to the rule? A unique story thanks to its 50-year journey and its reluctant founder? Can it actually be replicated? That's the big question we want to leave you thinking about.